All right, Jim McElwain hopes he found some answers at Friday night's Florida spring game. We bring in David Waters, uh, who joins the rest of us on SEC Breakdown every Wednesday night and also on Twitter. So please join us there, David. So if there's nothing we can't take from Friday night spring game, it's that the blue is definitely better than the orange. 44-6.
Yeah, and most of your first team starters were on that blue team, so that kind of leads to the kind of blowout score, if you want to call it. It is what it is. It's hard to read anything in these spring games. It's a risk if you read too much into them. They're set up for the offense to succeed, especially when your offense hasn't really had a lot of success during the regular season. They kind of set these up to get the fans excited about the offense and kind of see what happens. And you can glean a little bit. If with what you see, if they can make a pass or how they throw, how they set their feet for as quarterbacks go. Maybe some vision of some running backs and. I think really what you can tell is maybe sometime in the trenches, what the offensive and defensive line can do against each other. But, and Florida set it up where all of its stars were, put on one team and as in the blue team, and you got the result that you got.
All right, let's talk quarterbacks. Luke Del Rio was a guy that you pinned as the favorite going into spring practice. We talked about it about halfway through. You felt just about the same, although Austin Appleby obviously has a resume from Purdue. Del Rio had the one throwaway, which was a good decision. Otherwise, he hit 10 consecutive passes, albeit against the second team, but he looked like he was making the throws all over the field.
Right, and it was the way, it looked like he knew where to go with the ball as soon as the ball, either when it was pre-snap read or when the ball was snapped, he knew exactly where to go with it. You mentioned the one throwaway he had, it was his only incompletion. And, counting that, you could say everything he had was a good decision. There was some pressure coming off the edge there. There was nothing to do but to throw the ball away. He didn't take the sack, got rid of the ball. That was it's big. McElwain really, really, really harps on that type of things. It's the smart decisions. And incompletion sometimes is a smart decision, and Del Rio showed that. But as long as Del Rio, and this is what he showed the other night, he can manage the game. The system will allow for the offensive playmakers, whether it be the tight ends or the running backs or the wide receivers, to make the plays. That's all he needs to do is get the ball to the playmakers. He doesn't have to be the playmaker. And that's all the Gators need, to win most of their games this year. We mentioned Austin Appleby as well. He didn't look too bad either. He was, early in the game going against the first-team defense. And we know about the Florida defense and how good it has been and how good it continues to look. And he didn't look terrible. He made throws, and he was another one who got the ball out. He set his feet, made good throws, made good decisions. A little more erratic, but but not much. And I would say if we're going to rank him in order of how they were doing, then probably Kyle Trask comes next. He was a freshman, and if you want to say him being a freshman, you slide him into that second slot of being the most impressive out of the quarterbacks. He made some really strong throws and really good reads, and he probably had one of the best throws of the night as he just zinged one through down the middle of the seam. And I'll tell you what, he put it right on the money and right over a linebacker and right into the, hole in the zone coverage, and really, really impressed with that throw. But it was, Feleipe Franks who really turned out to be a struggle.
Yeah, so that's kind of the opposite end of the spectrum. Del Rio basically perfect. Franks not so much. 3 interceptions against the first team, and again he had to face the number ones. And then he finally got untracked a little bit against the twos on that final drive.
Right, and for him to struggle against what we're probably going to consider one of the SEC's best defenses is not a huge surprise. The surprise was, he looked panicked, and you can call that a surprise a little bit, but he is a true freshman and going against one of the best defenses in the nation, and it was and I'm sure if he could look back at it, he knows exactly what he did wrong. It was, right before halftime, threw an interception to Duke Dawson, and then threw another pick 6 to Duke Dawson. Duke Dawson was everywhere on the field, as when Franks was at quarterback, and him in a nickelback position. It looks like he's going to really take that role, and he was around receivers all night long. But then Franks also threw another interception to it was a screen pass that just wasn't pretty at all. But he like you said, he marched the offense 65 yards in 8 plays with a 16-yard touchdown pass to Keontae Lewis, and ended the night on a good night. And you could see, once he was going against a little bit more of his level right now, he was able to do some things. we do need to take into account, these are freshman quarterbacks with him and Trask. It's going to take some time. These guys are not going to step in and lead the offense and go win games for the Gators this year. One of them more than likely gets redshirted, maybe both of them. If they don't play during the regular season, maybe they could both get redshirted. But it is a Del Rio and Appleby show, with Del Rio probably, with a I would say a huge lead going into the fall.
And you also mentioned Duke Dawson. So we kind of have to separate at times. Guys have big spring games at times and didn't necessarily perform well in practice when the eyes were not there from the public and the media the previous month. But we understand from Jim McElwain that Duke Dawson had a really good spring practice all the way through.
Yeah, he got to step in at corner with Quincy Wilson nursing a little bit of a hamstring injury, or a groin injury, I'm sorry, and he was recovering from that. So Dawson got to step in a little bit and play some outside corner and really held his own. Quincy Wilson will come back in the fall, and Duke Dawson will probably slide into the nickel. Like I said, Friday night he was able to be a ball hawk, grabbing 2 of Frank's interceptions and 1 for a pick 6, and he's just going to continue that lineage of secondary that Florida has, as playmakers and guys who are always in position. So with the secondary, Tabor, Wilson, May, and Duke Dawson now, tell you what, that Florida secondary is probably not going to drop too much. It's kind of crazy to say you can lose one of the best cover corners in the nation in Vernon Hargraves and say that the defense is not going to drop a bit, but Jalen Tabor at times, last season looked better than Hargraves, and Hargraves has even called Tabor better than he is. So we'll see if Tabor can continue on that plateau, and maybe he does end up better this season. But he showed some things Friday night where he was in position. He's going to be in position as the starting and one of the leaders on the defense. So that Florida secondary is not going to be dropping off anytime soon.
David Waters and myself, along with Chad Niebling and Mike Laval, also Evie Van Pelt, Ole Miss Evie, with a venture called SEC Breakdown. We come your way every Wednesday night at 9 o'clock Eastern time, so join us on Twitter as well. All right, a couple playmakers on offense. Their stats jump out. We addressed Mark Thompson and the rare size-speed combination the last time we got together, Dave. And he made some plays in this game, got 5 carries, 46 yards, and we heard the reports that he could catch it out of the backfield, and he showed that.
He did, and the running backs did. That was one thing I was really ready to see from Jim McElwain is, with the screen game that he, used so much at Alabama with Mark Ingram, Trent Richardson. It was kind of an anomaly last season for Florida, and we got to see a little bit more of those running back screens and running back check downs and the running backs actually being receivers in the passing game, and it was nice to see that from the Florida offense. But you mentioned Thompson, 6'2", 242-pound beast, if you want to call it. He flashed on the cutting ability and vision that you don't see from too many guys that size. You mentioned the 5 carries for 46 yards, and he had a touchdown. And on that touchdown, all that ability I just talked about, he bounced it off the right tackle and raced to the end zone pretty much untouched. Not all was positive though. Later on in the game, holding on to the ball will be a key part too. He fumbled on a carry inside the goal line, though. C.J. Wharton was able to pick that up and take it into the end zone for another touchdown. But that was part of the thing we heard about Thompson making the transition from JUCO to the SEC Florida play. Is ball security was the thing, and it showed up Friday night in the spring game. It's going to be probably one of the main things they work on going into the summer fall camp. But they can get that short up, and that 6'2", 242 frame gets going. Florida's going to have a potent running game with the Scarlet, with the 2 Jordans, and Jordan Scarlett and Jordan Cronkrite.
David, do you expect Keontae Lewis to be as much a part of the offense as what he showed us on Friday night?
I do, and he kind of showed that ability last year before he took an injury. And McElwain wants to use the tight ends, and we saw, Jake McGee. They lose Jake McGee from last year, and Keontae Lewis will step into more of the receiving tight end role. We've heard whispers that throughout the spring as well that the tight ends have been used as extra blockers to help out the struggling offensive tackles along the Florida offensive line, and Keontae Lewis to step that game up too. But not to be outdone, I think Keontae Lewis and DeAndre Goolsby both showed, I think, really good ability to, once they catch the ball, make something happen after the catch. They both look to get upfield as soon as the catch is made, and I think that's a big part of what McElwain wants. It's going to be, with these struggling, I won't say struggling quarterbacks, but the quarterbacks are, but inexperienced. This is not a Big 12 passing offense by any means, and it's not going to be. So, you can get the tight ends to help. There were some mismatches on the field where I could see a little bit, bringing in the stadium. There was some pre-snap where, I saw, the tight ends were probably going to be open on that play, and the quarterbacks did get it to them, and they were able to separate from the linebackers that were covering them and, get in the zone and make a play. So Deontay Lewis is probably the best, I would say, if you want to call him speedster of the tight end group. I think Deontay Lewis is probably that guy. He can make a play after the catch.
So in 14 games in 2015, at no time did the Gators kick 3 field goals in any one game. And we know that had nothing to do with the offense scoring so many touchdowns that they didn't need to kick field goals. It was that bad. And we've talked about it many times. But you get 3 long ones from Eddie Pinheiro. He misses 2, but he converts 3 from 46, 54, and 56.
Right. And like you said, connected on 3 of the 5, and all but 1 was from at least 52 yards. And he made another important, it sounds like a joke, but he made all 5 of his PAT attempts. Even those weren't, for sure things for Florida last year. And so, it's weird to say at a program like Florida that the kicker gets the loudest ovation from a crowd in a spring game, but that was the case. I got to the stadium probably about an hour early, so I got to check out some warm-ups and stuff. Pinheiro got the loudest ovation during warm-ups, and of course he kicks his first field goal in the spring game and the stadium erupts. It was taking the last year into account, was a rare occurrence in the Swamp, so it was nice to see, and he was having fun with it too. He was out there dabbing with the snapper after made field goals, and it was a fun atmosphere, and there was no I don't think any embarrassment for cheering for the kicker for Florida, as much as an embarrassment it was the kicking game itself for Florida last year.
Dave, I really should have led with this, because while the rest of us watched on the SEC network or caught extensive highlights online, you were at the game. I should have led with this, because you get a different vibe for what's going on. You get a different vibe, and you talk to people to get a feel for the pessimism or the optimism about the team coming up in 2016. So any takeaways from the crowd and anybody that you talked with there in Gainesville?
Yeah, there was a big question whether this Friday night thing would work for Florida. And by all means, it really did. The crowd was a lot bigger than I expected for a Friday night, 7 o'clock. People maybe trying to get off work, trying to get to Gainesville. On a Saturday, people have time to drive, down from Orlando, maybe even Miami for spring games, from Jacksonville, where I am, which is an hour and a half, 2 hours away. But the crowd, the estimated 46,000 people for the spring game was, I thought really was a surprise for a Friday night. But, it wasn't for numbers in the seats is why McElwain did this. From what I heard, he wanted a Friday night to feature, an electric atmosphere on the Swamp Friday night. But also, now on Saturday, with all these recruits they bring in, he gets to spend all day Saturdays with these recruits, and that was a big thing. Yesterday he got to spend all day with these recruits instead of having to prepare for a game during the Saturday night. Play around noon, and then you get your post game. He was able to spend time with a lot of recruits, and Friday night a 3-star tight end, Kamor Gamble from Miami, committed to Florida, and probably the big thing, a favorable review from the number 1 quarterback in the 2018 class, Trevor Lawrence from Cartersville, Georgia. UF really made an impression on him, and he really took to the UF coaches. It was his first visit to Florida, and Florida looks like they have something to work with now on him and shoring up his recruitment. So it was a big advantage. The crowd seemed, they liked what they saw from Luke Del Rio, of course, and like I mentioned, the kicking game and the loudest ovation for Pinheiro. But it was a fun atmosphere for a Friday night, a spring game. It was something new, not the traditional Saturday, and I can really see more programs trying to do this. But, Florida had the 7 o'clock window to themselves on SEC Network, not really having to share it with anybody. The Masters was over, so TV time, down here in the South was, all Florida if you're looking for something for football and sports related.
All right, folks, you got David Waters, you got myself, Chad Napling, Mike Laval, Evie Van Pelt. We are SEC Breakdown. So join us on Twitter. We're talking SEC football, SEC sports all the time. Also, right now, our videos are posted at MarkRogersTV, and we will have an announcement of more details in terms of platforms and websites and so forth going forward. We're going to get ambitious here. Our goal is to knock out a positional breakdown of every position in the SEC for every team at the conclusion of spring practice between now and going toward August camp. So look forward for that. David, appreciate the breakdown on Florida.
Thanks, Mark.